Till that Southern live oak was a secret weapon of the USS Constitution, one of America's first naval vessels, that was nicknamed Old Ironsides after so many cannonballs bounced off her hull because live oak wood is a super dense wood. Crazy wide beautiful trees too, that live a very long time. They are all over the place in North Florida. Oh, I know the story of the battle where she gained that name. On the morning of August 19, 1812, the British frigate HMS Guerriere spotted a ship in the distance. Upon recognizing it as the American-built USS Constitution, which had escaped a blockade of Chesapeake Bay only days before under heavy fog, the crews of both ships prepared to engage their enemy. The captain of the Guerriere, James Richard Dacres, believing that his vessel, a fifth-rank frigate of the British Royal Navy, could easily take on a newly built American ship, ordered his vessel to heave to and fire a broadside. The first volley fell short. The following shots from the British ship were inaccurate at worst, and at best they simply bounced off the hard live oak sides of the Constitution. You see, when Congress finally granted permission for the U.S. Navy to build 6 ships, they didn't release funding for 6 ships, they only asked for 6 vessels. Joshua Humphreys, the designer of the Constitution and her sister ships, knew that the U.S. Congress was unlikely to order more ships and decided these ones must be built to stand up to any ship of their class without exception. To accomplish this, the USS Constitution and all ships of her class were built with live oak, one of the strongest and hardest to work with woods in the world, but one American shipbuilders had extensive experience with. This decision would allow the Constitution to simply absorb the force of the British 18-pound guns. As cannonballs bounced off the hull of the Constitution, one sailor cried out, "Huzzah!" Her sides are made of iron, earning the nickname of Old Ironsides. While the distance closed between the two ships, Captain Hull of the Constitution ordered his ship to close to a mere few yards. At that range the two ships began to pummel each other, blasting full broadsides into their opponents for nearly 20 minutes. While the hulls of American vessels were already top-notch, Mr. Humphreys did not skimp on offensive capabilities either. The Constitution carried 32 24-pound guns and 20 32-pounders, this far outstripped the Guerriere's own 16 32-pound and 30 18-pound guns. During this exchange of fire, the Constitution brought down the Guerriere's main mast, which allowed the USS Constitution to maneuver and put 2 full penetrating broadsides through the British ship. Unfortunately, during these maneuvers the Constitution's rigging tangled with the Guerriere's own, locking the two ships together. Both captains ordered their men forth and muskets spat across the decks. At one point the British were able to set fire to part of the Constitution, but it was quickly contained and put out. When the ships broke free, the Constitution rode downwind, repairing as much as they could before the vigorous crew returned to the fight. Perhaps the biggest advantage the United States Navy had over their counterparts in Britain was its seamen. The United States attracted the best sailors and seamen in the world. Americans were paid in gold, and, in perhaps the only incident of its kind on an American ship, when a sailor was ordered whipped by an American captain, that officer was removed from command by the Navy. American ships offered good pay, decent food, and better overall conditions than any other navy on the seas at the time. Thus American ships were manned by very best private sailors and even deserters from both the French and British fleets. On the opposite side, life in the British Navy was grueling. Long trips, little pay, harsh punishments, and recruitment which often amounted to armed kidnapping of people who had never stepped foot on a ship in their lives. The battle ended when the Guerriere fired a cannon off away from the Constitution. The U.S. Captain Isaac Hull took this as a sign of surrender and sent a young lieutenant to the beleaguered British vessel. Upon asking Captain Dacres if he was ready to surrender, the man responded, "Well, sir, I don't know. Our mizzen mast is gone, our fore and main masts are gone. I think on the whole you might say we have struck our flag." In short, the Americans sported harder wood, bigger balls, and better seamen than the British, bringing victory for the USS Constitution and the United States of America. The military has a private, for lack of a better adjective, forest of the trees specifically grown and cared for, to use as replacement wood on the Constitution. Only active UN vessel to win a naval engagement, if I remember correctly. Oak is not easy to work with either. https://udub/ph37dep0cvu, https://b/ph37dep0cvu. This man's mill is about 40 miles west of my house on the Florida line. His ingenuity and knowledge is impressive. If you go to places like Charleston, Brunswick, Jacksonville, or St. Augustine, the live oaks there are breathtaking. Old brick roads, with shady old live oaks decorated with Spanish moss. One of the most unique and memorable things in the South. Excellent book 6 Frigates by Ian Toll spends pages discussing the design of these frigates, why this specific wood was chosen, etc. They were a bitch to find, transport out of forest, cut, etc. and came from one specific island off South Carolina, I believe. Did I make that up? The large, 90-degree branches were ideal for making some of the joints needed in the frigates. This is also why you have oak-framed buildings in the UK that are hundreds of years old. The Navy still manages a forest of old-growth trees to provide wood for this ship. British ships of that era were built with heart of oak, the same kind of dense wood that the US Constitution was built with. The big difference was the Constitution was a 44-gun frigate actually carrying 50 guns, 24 x 32-pounder carronades, and 30 x 24-pounder guns. The frigates it encountered in the War of 1812, the 38-gun Guerriere with 16 x 32-pounder carronades and 30 x 18-pounder guns, the 38-gun Java with 16 x 32-pounder carronades and 28 x 18-pounder guns, as well as the Scion of 24 guns, the Levant of 18 guns, and the Pictou of 14 guns, were all significantly outgunned. The Constitution also had 21 thick hulls, which was again significantly thicker than the hulls of any of the frigates she went up against. She was for all intents and purposes a single-deck equivalent of a British fourth-rate ship of the line. She was also captained during the war by two very capable captains, Captain Isaac Hull, who fought the Guerriere, and the brilliant tactician Capt. William Bainbridge, who fought the Java, and the combined Scion, Levant, and Pictou. I think the argument that the Constitution was so successful because of the wood ignores the facts that the British Navy participating in the blockade of the US was extremely weak, because the vast majority of British naval forces were engaged blockading France and her allies, and ignores the fact that the Constitution completely outgunned and outclassed any of the ships she went up against. Had the British allowed any of the 2 or 3-decker ships of the line to engage the Constitution, she likely would have been in serious jeopardy. Thankfully for the US Navy of the time, the British Navy adhered to a strict code of naval honor and decorum that forbade them from engaging frigates with ships of the line. One of my favorite quotes is from the guy in charge of cutting down trees and roughing out frames for Constitution and her sisters in the swamps of Georgia: "If you was here, you'd hate live oak too."